It's March 15th. We're about 1 week into spring green up, and I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at a few of the food plots that we put in last fall. We'll take a look at three different kinds of food plots. This is what I would call a hunting and feeding plot. It's a relatively small plot, and we'll take a look at a larger clover plot that was strictly in clover. And then lastly, we'll look at one of the fields that I rotate back and forth between summer annuals and winter annuals. But let's start with this here. I couldn't help but getting some video of this. I mean, how beautiful is that? And with all these flowers, as you might imagine, it is absolutely alive with bumblebees and honeybees and every kind of pollinator that you can imagine. So what all do I have in this field? Well, this field is planted. The white flowers that you see here are radishes, and they've done quite well. You can see the radish here. This is kind of typical of the radishes that are throughout the fields. I also have a lot of purple top turnips. Let's see, here would be, now the purple top turnips did really well. That's a kind of a typical turnip. I planted 1 pound of purple top turnips to the acre, 3 pounds of the daikon radishes per acre, and this is what you get. Plus I also did 50 pounds to the acre of wheat. And you can see here that the wheat, it's gorgeous. It's starting to seed out some. It'll go to hard seed. The deer will start eating these seeds somewhere along the way. But the other thing that's in here is primarily this is a clover field. Now I plant these things for a couple of reasons. One, to build the soil and to improve it constantly, because as I've said so many times, I use no commercial fertilizers at all. Haven't in this field and since I can remember. So everything you see here is growing from natural regeneration from 1 year feeding the next. So the other thing that's in here though is clover. It's going to be harder to see, but the field is absolutely full of clover. It's down lower, obviously, and I have red ace red clover, I have Ladino white clover, and there's a little crimson clover in here as well. So the only thing I'm going to do to this field anytime this summer is I'll come in sometime late spring, early summer, and probably mow it down. If it starts getting a little weedy, I'll come in and hit it with the bush hog and mow it down. But other than that, what you see is what you get, and not only is it great for the soil, not only is it great for the wildlife, it's magnificently beautiful and something my wife and I love to ride around and take a look at. She's doing the filming today, so I appreciate her being here to enjoy nature's bounty. Now, with that in mind, let's go take a look at a couple of the other fields and see what we can learn. We're in another clover field, and this was the first clover field that I planted last year. As you can see, the clover is doing fantastic, but what's interesting is I planted this field in the exact same mixture as the field that you just looked at. The big difference is I planted this field first, and I planted that field probably 3 weeks later after some moisture became available. So what happened? I planted the radishes, the turnips, the small grains, but there's no thatch in this field. This has always been a clover field for the last few years, and so there was minimal thatch. And at the time I planted, we had been in a drought for a couple of months actually, and it didn't rain for another month after I planted this field. So I learned an important lesson. Nothing came up. There was no thatch to hold the moisture, and a lot of the things that I planted didn't come up. Now, you know, what the field is full of, you can see some crimson here. That's crimson clover just starting to bloom, and there's a ladybug on my hand too. So lots of fun things in the field, but at any rate, a lot of crimson in here. The crimson's been here for years. It continues to become a reseeding annual. I also have some red clover in here as well, and there's some Ladino in this field also. So the lesson I learned is on the clover fields where there's no thatch, I have to have the moisture. I have to plant around the moisture. I don't have the luxury I have on some of the fields that I rotate with summer annuals and fall annuals of having thatch to preserve the moisture. So I have to work more with the moisture at hand to plant these clover fields. It is good luck that the clovers did fantastic, and as you can see, this field's got a lot of clover in it, a lot of crimson in it primarily, but with all the other clovers that are in here, there'll be something growing well into the summer depending on weather conditions. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at this field and compare it to the one we were just in and understand that the primary difference was one simple thing: moisture. That's something professional farmers know all about. Us amateur food plotters, we're still learning. So now let's go look at a field that I do rotate back and forth with summer annuals and fall annuals, and let's go see how it looks. The last two fields we looked at were dedicated clover fields. They were planted in red clover, some Lundino, a little crimson clover. And something I failed to mention is in all of the clover fields that I have, I put about 2 pounds to the acre of chicory in them as well. So I didn't mention that in the other fields, but there's chicory in the clover fields as well. But this field is different. This is a field that I rotate back and forth. It's a little bit bigger at about 11 acres, and I'll plant fall annuals as well as summer annuals in it. Pretty much manage it the same with a couple of exceptions. Normally, I plant this in Elbon rye, but this year there was no Elbon rye, so I had to use wheat, winter wheat, and I have 100 pounds to the acre of winter wheat in here. I planted the radishes that you can see, and there's some turnips up in here as well. This field was planted a little later. They didn't get quite as big as they did in some of the other fields, but they did all right. They're doing the purpose that I need them to do. But the main thing that's in here also is crimson clover. I planted the crimson, I'm going to guess 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and it has become a very vigorous reseeding annual. And it's come back, I don't know how well you can tell, but it's knee-high throughout this entire field. Now the other thing that's interesting about this field, if you'll look at it, it is lush, it is vibrant, it is beautifully green, and it hasn't had any fertilizer in years, just like I keep saying over and over again. All of the fertility I've built into this field by rotating crops back and forth, and letting the previous season's crop create the fertility for the future season's crop. And you can see there's still, let's see, well, there's not much thatch left. The field has pretty much eaten up the thatch that's in here. There's spots here and there that there's a little thatch, but for the most part, the microbiology of the soil has eaten up the thatch, and it was that thick when I planted it in the fall. We literally had to drill into it. So, as you know, my technique will be to come in here with a roller cripper, crimp it down, drill the summer crop in here, which this year is going to be sun hemp, soybeans, cowpeas, sunflower. I'll put some buckwheat in here and okra. So we'll come back when I do the planting for the fall crop and take another look as I'm we'll come back here when I'm doing the summer crop and look at how I do that. But for now, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at this field, and I won't start crimping it till the crimson is fully bloomed out. So that will be early May for all practical purposes. So it's March 15th, another 6 or 7 weeks before I do anything with this field, but thought it'd be interesting to take a look at it now. So that's what a couple of different variations of the fields on the farm look like in mid-March. We'll come back as it turns into summer planting time. Hope this is helpful.